Hey everyone, Britta Albert here. If this is your first time here, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. In today's video, I want to share a little bit about my journey and what this last 2 weeks, or really this last 6 weeks, has meant for my personal growth. Some of the things that I experienced, some of the things that I realized, and some of the things that I overcame. I'm going to break this up in a series of videos because, to be honest, it is just far too much to cover in one single video, and it may not resonate fully with every single person because this is my story, but I want to break it up in different topics and then also show kind of the overall how everything tied together. So this series will have its own playlist, which I'll link below. Now, before we get started, if this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell notification so that you never miss out on a future video. So the topic of today's video, if you can hear me over these birds, is going to be how I realized that the private Christian school I grew up in is actually more like a cult. Now, this is not meant to offend anybody. This is not meant to bash Christians. This is not meant to bash Christianity. This is me telling you my story. And I hope that by sharing this story, it helps you maybe overcome some of the things that you might have struggled with, or realize that what you're told isn't the end all be all, and you can decide what resonates best for you. So again, the only thing I can do at the end of the day is just share my personal experiences. This story is of those personal experiences. For the beginning part of my schooling years, I was homeschooled until grade 2. In the second grade, I was so excited because I got to actually go to a school. I was hoping I could ride on a school bus and have lunch in a cafeteria, that I would have friends in recess and be able to go sit at a desk and have different classes. So I was so excited from these ideas that I had of what school was to be able to go to school for the first time. My mom and my dad, I'm not positive why they made the decisions that they did as far as putting us in a private school. I believe that, if your parents are willing to pay for an education, that we're very blessed, and their intention was for us to have a better environment than what we might have gotten at our local public school. Well, it doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. From the very beginning, I struggled with reading. Now, that has nothing to do with it being a cult or anything like that. That was just part of my process, part of me struggling with what was going on. A lot of the cult-like mentality of this story isn't actually the school itself. It's not the institution of the private school that I went to. The curriculum was not a good fit for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean the cult-like behavior. However, there were these workbooks, and in the workbooks are little cartoons. They were extremely outdated. Some of them were very racist. The way that they portrayed the secular world was in line with that kind of cult-like experience. So in this story, I'll be kind of jumping around from the people, but then also it has a backbone of their education system that they chose to use. So in grade 2, I started out having trouble with reading, and that was extremely difficult because these workbooks, the way that the school was set up, you didn't really have the traditional teacher that you have when you go to a regular public school or possibly even another private school. I don't have experience with other private schools, only this particular one. So instead of having a desk, they called it a desk, but it was really more like these little cubicles. And if you had questions, there were these flags that you would put up, and the teacher or the teaching assistant would come around to each desk or cubicle and they would answer questions for you. But you go at your own pace. You work at the level that you're at, which in theory could be a really positive thing. And for some kids, that's the way that they learned best, and it worked really well for them. It's not unlike going to school online or something like that. it's just not right for everyone. So I already started out being behind in my class, because in order to teach yourself, you have to read the instructions. So if I'm already struggling with reading, I'm behind on every subject possible. So I started out at this school believing that I was less than, believing that I was unintelligent. Throw into the mix that my parents are divorced, and it made some parents uneasy. This is a very fundamentalist Christian private school. You are kind of a pariah to have your parents divorced, at that time at least. Bear in mind, this is almost 30 years ago. So we're at this private school, and I go through grade 2, and then I go through grade 3. In 3rd grade, my mom got remarried, and she ended up having a son with my stepdad. So I was all excited to have a new baby brother, and I remember I begged my mom to take my newborn baby brother, bring it to my class for show and tell, so I could show my friends I had a new baby brother. And she did, and it was really fun for me to be a big sister and be able to show off my baby brother. There were things happening in grade 3 that I wasn't fully aware of yet. My self-awareness and my awareness of my surroundings and people and the way that they treated me, I wasn't really on it yet. I was kind of in my own little world. I believe it was in grade 4 that my second little brother was born. No, I apologize. It was grade 5. So in grade 5, my second brother is born. I'm 10. And Chase is about roughly 18 months or so when Taylor is born. And these are my 2 little brothers. Then things are starting to come to the surface more, or I'm realizing that things are not quite right. And I remember that there was one of the teacher's kids, one of the daughters, she was a year older than me, and she told me that my little brothers were going to hell. And I didn't understand why my little baby brothers, my infant baby brother and not even 2-year-old baby brother, were going to go to hell. And she told me that it was because my parents were divorced, that my mom was going to hell and my stepdad was going to hell because they got a divorce, and that because they had children together, that the souls of those children were damned already because of what the parents had done. So you could say that this is a kid being mean, but this kid heard it from somewhere. This kid heard, this was an 11-year-old kid who's telling this to a 10-year-old kid about her newborn and toddler siblings. This is a teacher's child. There's something not right. There's things that are being taught that are not right. And even if it was taken out of context, why would people be talking about my family, my parents being divorced, and my mom and my stepdad having children together? Why is that a topic in anybody's household? Well, that's where it started. Move on to grade 6. I don't have a lot of friends because it's a very small school. Boys and girls are not really supposed to talk to each other. And I had just a handful of girlfriends because there was 20 kids in my class, including myself. So there's 19 other kids for me to even be friends with within my class. So I made this friend, and there was a group of 5 of us girls. I received an email from one of the girls, and we were just starting to get close. We were just starting really to develop a friendship. She tells me how she had tried to kill herself. She goes into detail about the pills that she took and the color of the pills that she took and how it made her feel. She went into detail about vomiting up these pills and what it looked like in the toilet, and pretty much just says that she wants to take her own life, that she's not happy. So I get scared and I run and I go tell my mom, and I show my mom this email. And granted, my mom should have contacted her mom, but at the time she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what the right call was. So this girl, her parents were also divorced. There were 3 of us in the class who had parents divorced. And I thought that was kind of common ground for us. You would think that the parents would want to stick together, understanding that there's inequality within the school and the families as it was. You'd be incorrect. My mom ends up not doing anything except for just kind of comforting me and telling me that everything's going to be okay, that my friend's not going to kill herself. And a few days later, I get an email from this girl's mother. And she says, I'm going to paraphrase here, but she said something along the lines of, my daughter did not do that. She's never done that. We don't even have any pills in the house that look like what she described. And instead of taking any kind of accountability or responsibility for her daughter and what her daughter did and said, regardless if it was true or not, the mother's reaction and response was to say, she's never done or said any of this before until she met you, Brittany. What is it about you? What is so special about you that she would want to lie and come up with this story? Why is she trying to impress you? And you know, for a scared parent, that's a valid question. But I was 11. I just wanted to be accepted like everybody else. There was nothing about me at the time that was rebellious, or I did my best to be a good Christian little girl. I didn't push the boundaries. I didn't push back against people or authority. Honestly, I was scared to death of authority. So I wouldn't have tried to encourage anybody to hurt themselves or really go against anything, because also what we were taught is that if you kill yourself, then you go to hell. So not only am I afraid for my friend to hurt herself, but I'm also afraid because then she would go to hell and pretty much suffer for all eternity. So this girl's mom calls a meeting with the principal, and we don't really know what's going on. My mom shows up with me at the school. That mother is there, but her daughter is not. On top of that, the other 4 moms of my friends are there, and their kids are not. So I'm the only kid that's there. My mom is there, and the principal, and these 5 mothers. We had no idea what we were walking into. And unfortunately, my mom, she had a hard time standing up for herself, and she had a hard time standing up for her kids. I think somewhere inside her, she judged herself also. I think there was a lot of religious fear because so many people were telling her that everything revolving around the divorce and how that happened and the events leading up to it, that essentially she was going to go to hell. And so she had to reach a point in her life where she was strong enough in herself to say, I know God, and that's not a truth that I'm accepting. But at that time, she wasn't that person yet. And so I'm going to guess that probably somewhere within her questioned whether these people were right or not, even if she knew they weren't right. Religious fear is difficult because you're taught that if you question, that just by questioning you can go to hell. The question was raised, is questioning your faith worth your soul? Because they taught us that once you said the prayer and you accepted Jesus into your heart, and then you'd go to heaven, and there's nothing that you could do to lose your salvation, but you can give away your salvation. I've never seen that in the Bible, but that is absolutely what we were taught. You cannot lose your salvation, but you can give it away. You can choose to not have salvation. Which, why would anybody choose that? If somebody chose not to receive the love of God, that just tells me they've never experienced the love of God. Because there's nothing you could do to deny that love once you felt it. The only possible way you could turn away from it would be if you never experienced it to begin with. So getting back to this meeting of all these mothers and the principal and my mom and I. So it ended up turning just into this massacre. We just had to sit there and listen to this mother who tore me apart and said what a terrible person I am, what a terrible child I am. I don't even remember everything that was said, thankfully. I just remember that the point of the meeting was that all of these mothers were trying to get me expelled because this one mother could not accept responsibility for her child's actions and see that there's some cry for help going on. She never even got her kid help. She just blamed it all on me. I was the reason her daughter was saying that. Now, I don't know the conversation that she and her daughter had together. It's quite possible that her daughter was scared and threw me under the bus. I have no idea. But from the email I received, it didn't sound like they even had a conversation. She just went to that conclusion. And that's her prerogative as a mother, I guess. But it still really sucked. Their whole point for this meeting was to get me expelled from this private Christian school. And honestly, I wish that they'd succeeded. But at the time, the principal looked at them and said that there was nothing within the guidelines of what the school could do to expel me. That there was nothing I had done wrong that they could use as grounds for expulsion. However, they are the parents, and if they don't want their children to hang out with me, then they have full right and authority to tell their kids that they can't be friends with me. So that's what they did. There was one other parent who wasn't able to attend, but she heard about it from the other parents. The other girl's mom, who was not able to attend, was the only other person in my class whose parents were divorced as well. To this day, I cannot believe that the school allowed this. However, this was about 22 years ago. This mother took me out of class and had me leave the school with her and get into her car with her and sit in her car in the parking lot of the school while she broke down and begged me to stay away from her daughter because she was so terrified of me being a bad influence on her child. I didn't know what I had done, but I believed what they were saying about me because my mom didn't. I knew my mom was upset and I knew she didn't agree with them per se, but no one ever told me I wasn't a bad person. And I believed them. So when I had this mother who is having me in the car with her and she's crying and she's begging me not to be friends with her daughter, I did the only thing I could do, and I promised her that I would not be friends with her daughter, that I would stay away from her daughter. And I just knew. Even now, I have compassion for her because I knew that that was a desperate mother. That was a fear-filled, desperate mother. And I knew that, right or wrong, she was doing the best that she could for her child. But that's what makes these situations so complex. What is the cult here? Is it the mentality of the people? Is it what is taught? It's a little of both. That same year, I went from having friends to having almost no friends. It was very lonely. I started to get bullied that same year by boys, and my dad would tell me, oh, they like you. So I also learned that to be called names, to be broken down emotionally when I'm already weak, is a positive attention. I learned to overlook what was being said to me and to continue to be nice and give away my power, because that's what a crush looked like. In grade 7, I got in trouble at youth group for arguing with one of the teachers. This teacher was answering a question that another student had asked, and the student said, what happens if somebody dies before they have a chance to ask Jesus into their heart? And the teacher explained that they go to hell for eternity. We're like 12 and 13-year-olds. I'm 33 right now, and I still have a hard time grasping eternity. With that same conversation, someone else asked, what happens if somebody has an abortion? And the teacher said that the baby goes to hell. And because of the belief that children are punished and the souls of children are punished for the sins of their parents, just as my little brothers were going to hell because my parents got a divorce and got remarried, and then they had these 2 kids that were a product of that sin of getting remarried, there was not really a question from the kids. It was like we got that answer and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, an aborted baby, that would go to hell. That makes sense. So then another question was posed and said, well, what about miscarriages? Because surely those souls are safe, right? Parent didn't do anything wrong. They just lose the baby. The teacher says they go to hell. Anybody who doesn't have a chance to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior would go to hell. Nah. I'm done. I'm angry. I'm lonely. And by this time, my heart had such a wall from hurt that all I'm capable of doing is projecting anger. And I am starting to become the kid that everybody said that I was when I was 11. I turned 13 and I'm a teenager now, and I think I'm a badass. And I'm pissed off at the world, and I'm pissed off at God, and I'm pissed off at the teachers, and I'm pissed off at the students, and I'm by myself in life. And if you think that I'm gonna be this person and I'm such a bad person, then I'm going to show you what you think I am. That was my mentality. My parents would have an occasional drink at home. They liked happy hour, but I rarely ever saw them, if ever, overindulge through my whole life. My dad would have wine at dinner. My mom and my stepdad would have cocktails or beer. So because I pushed back and I said that alcohol is not bad, I didn't think my parents were bad. I didn't see them doing anything that was negative. I was labeled as an alcoholic. I also believe in the power of spoken word. And when my sister got surgery and I was in year 8, I went to the teacher and I asked where in the Bible I could find healing scriptures. And what I meant was scriptures where Jesus heals, or they're talking about people getting healed. Like, what can I read that I can use as a prayer and intention towards my sister? My teacher responded, there's no such thing as healing scriptures. That would be a spell or an incantation. So I somehow ended up escalating, and I argued through that, and labeled as a witch. So here I am at this private Christian school, and because I don't believe that babies go to hell, which not everybody did. I'm not going to say this was the belief that was accepted by the masses. No. If these are the things that I encountered, though, I wonder what some others encountered as well. As I graduated and got out of the school, I finally started talking to some of the kids who had gone there, and they all said the same thing, that they felt like they had to close their mouths and they could not be their authentic selves, and that no matter what they did, they were being judged. No matter who they were being judged. This is a common thing from everybody who was at that school. So I know that I'm not the only one that experienced things, that there were others. Also in grade 7, I got my first boyfriend. We didn't do anything. We just said, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend. Okay, cool. Your classic middle school romance. But we had to be very careful that people didn't find out. People did find out because we weren't good at it. But like, it wasn't okay. Even just to say like, oh, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend. We could have gotten in trouble for that. And we kissed on the cheek once, and nobody found out about that. I did tell my mom, but the school didn't find out about that because I definitely could have gotten expelled for that. The workbooks, circling back to those and how they played a role in not only just the people, but the way that the education was presented. These workbooks had little cartoons in them, little comic strips. And these kids in these comic strips, they grow up with you year after year after year. So you're seeing these same kids as they go through life and they encounter these problems. And these are good Christian kids. So they're your example of how to handle situations. It's extremely sexist. The girls find themselves in situations where they have to often mind themselves to cater to the males. Hold their tongues. And if you're being sexually assaulted, you need to make sure that your clothes are right, that you're covering up, and that you're not giving misinformation and flirting unintentionally. They don't seem so bad when you're seeing them year after year after year after year after year, and you're seeing the same kids. Honestly, there were many times where I just didn't even read the dang things because they're stupid in my opinion. But they did set the groundwork for the underlying message behind the education. Sophomore year, I went to public school. I finally got my parents to allow me to go to public school. I went for sophomore and junior year, and I went back to that damn school for senior year, which I regret always. I was so terrified to go to private school because these little comic book characters had me believing that everybody hates Christians. And I had been in this bubble my whole life. I was homeschooled, and then I went to this Christian private school. These same 19 kids roughly that I'd known from second grade through freshman year in high school. And finally I was getting to leave this toxic environment, and I was going to go hopefully make friends and find myself and have these experiences and get to go to dances and get to ride on an actual bus and get to have an actual cafeteria, because my school didn't have any of that either. And just these little dreams that I had, I just wanted to be normal. I wanted to be accepted. They had me so terrified because from the things that I'd learned and I'd picked up from being at this Christian private school, not only from these little comics, but from the teachers, and again, it's not everybody, it's only select people, but it was an underlying theme, is this idea that public school kids hate Christian kids, and that everybody who goes to public school is, to call them secular, is not within our religious community, that there's no Christians that go to public school, and that everybody there hates you and they want to hurt you and they want to attack you, and it's very dangerous to go to a public school. I lived in suburban Oregon, Beaverton, Oregon, right outside of Portland, high middle class area. You probably could not get much safer anywhere in the country. So my very first day at public school, I'm terrified. My whole first week, I'm terrified. Nobody's talking to me, I'm this weirdo, and I'm so scared of everyone that I'm borderline annoying. But it's because they had me believing that, I really did, I believed all of that. And I remember there was a boy that liked me, and he was Jewish. My ignorant ass was like, aren't you supposed to hate me? Because again, I was just exposed to this world of the Bible, and what I was taught was it was almost anti-Semitism. They taught us that Jewish people hated Christians. And I went to public school thinking that Jewish people hated Christians. I'm sorry, but that's really messed up. So when I say things like the version of Christianity that I was exposed to, this is the stuff I'm talking about. When I left the church and decided that I'm not going to be calling myself a Christian anymore, there are some people, when they hear what I believe, which I haven't really made a video about, and I will, when they hear what I believe, they're like, well, clearly you're a Christian. Then there are others who hear what I believe and they say, absolutely not, you're an abomination. I understand that there are Christians who believe like I believe, and they call themselves Christians. I understand that there's different flavors of Christianity. I don't understand how that can be a thing if you're all Christian, but you all believe differently. But I don't judge any of it. However, when I explain the reason that I believe the things that I do, and I say specifically it's because of the version of Christianity I was exposed to, this is what I'm talking about. Extremely judgmental, extremely hypocritical. There's no love, it's just fear. Pretty much it was being raised to believe that we're all such pieces of shit that Jesus had to come die on a cross because of just how disgusting we are. And you might believe that. And that's on you if you want to, and I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong with that, because I don't believe that that's how God views us. Because in the other breath, they'll say that we're all perfect and God created us perfect. These are things I've known. This is a part of my past that I'm aware of. But these last 6 weeks, this has been coming up for me to actually deal with and face and forgive myself. Now, what is there that I have to forgive myself for? I had to forgive myself for the fact that I believed these things for so long. I ran from these memories and I never faced them. And because I never faced them, I could never look at them with the mind of a 33-year-old and then understand things from my perspective now. How could I heal what I wouldn't face? So the process over the last 6 weeks, and very intensely the last 2 weeks, why I didn't post videos, is because I was facing everything that I once ran from. This was a big part of that. Reconciling that Jesus is my deity, and I do believe in God, but what does that mean? Because I do not believe. I choose not to believe. that version of Christianity that I was exposed to. So it means that I need to go on my own and I need to question things, or I'm choosing to go on my own and question things. Again, I know Christians that will hear everything that I just said and said, absolutely not, those things are not true, and they can show you biblically where it's not true. There are still parts that I disagree with. And as an adult, I'm coming into the forgiveness for judging myself, for questioning. Because even though I have decided to question and find God for myself, it's still terrifying. And can I forgive myself for being scared? Can I forgive myself for once believing that God thought that I was a piece of shit? Can I also forgive myself for believing that God created women as an afterthought? The way that I learned the story of Adam and Eve is that God created the heavens and the earth. God created the animals. God created man, Adam. And Adam was in charge of the earth. Adam was in charge of naming the animals and tending to the land. And Adam lived in the Garden of Eden and had a relationship with God. And then God saw that Adam was sad. So God took a rib from Adam and created Eve. Again, the way that this story was taught to me and my classmates and the kids at church and the kids at youth group, how does that make you feel as a female? God has this golden boy, Adam. And when God sees that Adam is sad and lonely, then, only then, is Eve created. The bitch who is in charge of destroying humanity. How does God view women? Not very good. When I realized that, I realized that I was unaware I had a belief system in me that said that God loves me less because I'm a woman, that I am evil, manipulative, and sinful because I'm a woman, and that my only purpose is to carry the ego of men, to tend to their need, to fluff the ego and make them feel good about themselves, to be the entertainment and the conversation and please them sexually and procreate. At the base of it all, that was the belief that I had that God felt towards women. That was one of the most intense moments of the last 2 weeks. I don't know that I have ever cried so hard when I realized that that belief was there. I had no idea that that belief was there. And my coach helped me the way that I help my clients. And she was fantastic. And what we were doing is she was walking me through forgiving myself of these beliefs that I had and these judgments that I had. And it came up. And the moment that I said it, I knew it was true, and I broke down. And I had to forgive myself for having that belief that I didn't put in my own mind. But still, can I forgive myself for believing that? And can I forgive myself for judging myself that way? And all women? Yes. And now that that belief was exposed, I get to choose. Do I want to believe that anymore? I can, but I don't. And I won't. I don't know if any of these resonated with you. Hopefully, most of you never had an experience like that. But I wanted to share this part of my journey to help you understand that it's okay to recognize that things are not okay. And you get to choose. Do you want to believe those things anymore? Or do you not? Do they serve you or do they not serve you? And when you stop running from these painful memories and you finally face them, you get to see them through the perspective of who you are now. I'm not 11 years old anymore. I'm not sitting in front of those moms hearing them say what a bad person I am. I'm not 13 anymore, filled with anger and rage. I'm not 15 anymore, terrified to be a Christian. I get to choose. And if I say I'm choosing to find out who God is because I love God, and I want to know who the Creator is, and I want to know who Source is, Spirit, whatever you want to call it, can that be okay for me? Yes. If the Creator really is loving and divine, do you think that Creator would send you to hell for trying to know it better? For trying to have a relationship outside of the parameters of what other people have told you about that Creator? That's where I am. Again, if this video resonated with you and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And if you got something out of it, please give it a thumbs up. It lets me know, number one, that you guys are watching it this long. It also lets me know, do you want to hear more of this topic? Do you want to hear more of my experience? Is this something that you're interested in? When I get the thumbs up or thumbs down, I mean, go ahead and give a thumbs down if you hated it. That's fine too. These things, they just help me understand what you guys want, what you want to hear more of, and if you hate it, then that's fine, and I won't talk about it again. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for being with me today, and I will see you next time.